Holy steering rack, Batman! Happy New Year and welcome back to Build with the Boys. We now have issue 41 of Hachette's Build the Batmobile Tumbler. And in this one, we're doing something that isn't wires. Right, so we're actually moving on to build now. We're going to start building some car. I think it's been a long time coming, but it's a good start to the year. We're going to start building some car. And what we're doing in this one is we're building the steering rack. So we are going to need the front section of the car we made with the bulkhead and the wheels attached to it. You're also, and this is going to frustrate a lot of you, you're going to need to start unplugging the wires that we all plugged in. So you are going to need to retrieve this motor. This is number 2. It's marked number 2. You need to retrieve this for this stage. I think that's what's going to happen now. We're going to unplug all those wires, but we've tested them. Okay, so we know they work. So let's stay positive. There is a bit to do in this one, which is nice. I mean, because it's been so long, we've been chomping at the bit to actually do something that isn't just plugging in some wires, that finally we do now start to move on to the car. And all 6 issues of this now are work to do. Not huge amounts of work, but so is the nature of a part work, but work nonetheless. And we are still working almost exclusively on the cockpit. We do have some floor panels come in. We are working on the bulkhead on this one, but ultimately that is going to attach to the cockpit. But we'll get into it. It's nice to do something that isn't wires, right? We have arrived, those of you who watch our bat chats, we've arrived finally at the Nolan films, including the film this one's in. So we're going to be talking about Batman Begins at the end of this one, and through the next 6 as well. So tune in for that. Without further ado, let's get this open. Let's get this built. If you haven't yet, please remember to like and subscribe. Helps channel massively, and we just love having you on for the journey, and we need you to help us fight against the forces of evil in Gotham. So be a rascal and hit that subscribe button. Let's get this one open. Let's get into it. Okay, so here we go. Let's have a look what we get. Again, seriously, Hachette, stop doing this. Whatever you are paying to print this on there, stop doing it. Stop doing it. Just stop and pass the saving on to the consumer. It's lovely, but they just go in the bin. Right, so let's have a look what we get in here. There's a lot of screws in this one. Look at all these. Are these all screws? Oh, we've got AIM, UM, EM. That's not screws. AM. Right, so there's a lot of screws there. Let's see what this is, because this is not screws. Okay, that appears to be some sort of cover. And then that's going to hold the motor in place. And then we have, so we have the steering rack, and guess what? It looks like a steering rack. This is metal. Yep. And then we have the steering rack arms, again, metal. Which is good, because those wheels are bloody heavy, and if that little motor is going to move those wheels, which I think it's implying that it's going to do, this thing is going to have to be smooth. And I mean, like, seriously, like a greased otter smooth. Right, so let's have a look what we're going to do, and let's get this built. Okay, so we're going to start with our steering rack. Now, the actual rack itself, we're going to put that side down. So we're going to have that face down to begin with, and we're going to have it this way around. We're going to take both our steering arms. Now, your steering arms are exactly the same. There's no difference in the steering arms. And the way they are going to go on is we're going to start with, so there is a slight angle though. No, there isn't. That's just what I'm looking at it. Right. So this one is going to sit over here like so. So I'm going to put that one over there. And we're going to hold this in place with EM screws. Now, the M stands for metal, so we're going to use 3-in-1 oil. So I'm going to load up an EM screw. You just touch the tip in the metal, in the oil, sorry, like so. And then I'm going to screw this one in place. It just makes life a lot easier when you use the oil, believe me. Otherwise, these things can, you get burrs and whatnot, and it can be a bloody nightmare. But use the 3-in-1, it just goes in like a dream. Plus, I mean, these are moving parts, so a little bit of extra lubrication ain't going to hurt, is it? Let's get that all the way in. Now, I don't want this over-tightened, because ultimately, this is a moving part. But I also don't want it, see, that's tight. Too tight. Let's loosen that. Because this is, again, this part's going to move. So I want this perfect. That's how I want it. I want it so I've got movement, but it's not flopping around all over the place. Does that make sense? So, with a gentle push, it'll move, but I don't want it where it'll wiggle. So that's how I've got that one. Yep. They're saying to tighten it. I'm not so sure about that. We'll see. I'm choosing to go my own way. Right, so I'm going to pop this one in there, and we're going to repeat the exact same process. So I'm going to get that done, and we'll take a look. So that's how we're now looking. They are saying to tighten it so it stays in this position. Now mine are still loose enough, but tight enough so I can put them in any position I want, and they'll stay. So that's kind of the optimum I would say you need to be. You don't want this sort of flopping around, but I mean, again, you can put it in any position, it'll stay there. That is how you want it to be. See, that's too loose. Do half a rotation. There we go. That's how I think is the optimum, because this is going to move. It's a moving part. If you tighten this, you're going to have a bad time. It's going to be a nightmare to deal with. But that's all we're doing with that one for now. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring up our wheels, because we're going to be working on those. Okay, so what we're going to do here now. This depends on how yours has been kind of glued on. You can see mine there is massively protruding over the side. So I'm going to put this so I'm not going to squash or bend or buckle that that wire. So we're going to have the wire facing forwards. So that's going to fit in there, into this groove here. And now we are going to take the, what are they calling it? They are calling it the steering motor plate. And we're going to fit this in to here. And then we're going to screw this in place. So let me get this black on black on black on black. It's not the easiest thing to film. So we'll line this up so you can see it. That's how we're going to be going. And then we're going to screw this into place. And that should hold your steering motor in. Lovely. So let's get the screws. Now for that one, those are AM screws. So again, use your 3-in-1 or because you're going into metal. Okay, so that's that one screwed in. That was simple enough. The next thing we do is take our steering rack. And what we're going to do is the teeth need to line up with the gear that we've just put in. But I wouldn't worry about that too much for now. What we need to do is get it over these sections here. So the bottom of these pins, this isn't going to be the easiest because this isn't stable yet, but it will be, thankfully. We're going to hold that in place with one of the AIMs. Now these are the round head, the flat-headed screws. So let's see if we can, this looks fiddly as hell. Slow and steady on these. So one's going, yeah, this could be fun in games. All right, let's try that again. Now again, you want this tight, but you don't want it over tight because it's got to move. It has to move. If you tighten these up, this thing's just going to chew gears. So that's that one in. Now we're going to move on to the one on this side. Put that one over there. Yeah, I might be wrong, but that motor seems bloody small for the weight that it is going to move. I could be completely wrong. This might be the smoothest mechanism in the world, but that motor seems awful small for the weight that this thing's got to shift backwards and forwards, left and right, if you will. But I can't see it. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But well, I guess we'll find out, won't we? I don't know if we get to test this. Right, let me get this screwed this in. Then we're going to move this up and we're going to attach this to the actual bulkhead. Okay, so we got those screwed in. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our steering rack here, line it up with the gear, but it will fit over. So we have these two rods here that this is going to fit over, and we're going to put them through the slots, like so. And then we're going to hold this in place with a single two UM screws, one in each one. So let's get these put in. Get the first one in. And the other one should be relatively simple. He hopes, he says, he dreams, he prays. Whoop. Old eyes. Let me get one in, and then we'll put the other in. Okay, so I've got this one in, and I've just got this one started. So we're gonna tighten this one up. Now again, these are to hold this in place. They're not to pin it. So this is going to have to move. So again, don't go mental. I mean, you want it tight, you want it firm so it's not loose, but at the same time, you certainly don't want it pinned. Does that make sense? Hope that makes sense. Let's try a different screwdriver. The head on these screws is bloody tiny. Let's go the size down on the wearer. There we go, that's got it. So that one's tighten this one up just a little, because again, I want it to be able to move. That is that done. So now we have our steering rack in place, as you can see. Now this should move, but if we try to move it now, we're going to chew gears, and I don't want to chew gears. Do we get any? Yeah, I can't get any movement out of that. We're nowhere near done with regards to steering rack anyway. So it's there's more to go to this. We've got to put shock absorbers and all kinds of things in. And then I would imagine the devil in me is saying test it, Scott, test it, see if it works. But I'm thinking I might just end up buggering the gears up. So I don't think I will. I think we'll wait and see. We know the motor works, and we know we've built this correctly. So if that motor doesn't turn the wheels, well, we know there's something else going on. It wasn't powerful enough. But there we are. That's that one done. Let's have a chat. So that's that one done, simple enough. It's nice to do something that isn't wires, right? But we're finally moving on. In the next one, we're going to be building, we're going to be working on the chassis. So we have a very large chassis piece that we're going to attach some wires to. We're going to screw those in place. It doesn't join to anything. As far as I'm aware, we're not joining it to anything at this point, but we are ready in the chassis because you can see where this is going to go. At some point, this is all going to marry together and we're going to have what we're going to have. If you are just sticking around for the build instructions, thank you for stopping by. If you're sticking around for our bat chat, we are talking about this one. So we have finally arrived at the Nolan movies. Now, it was a long time getting there, literally a long time getting there, because the gap between Batman Forever and Batman and Robin and Batman Begins is 8 years. So 2005, Batman Begins was released in the cinemas. It was 1997 that Batman and Robin stank the joint up. But there were a lot of attempts at bringing Batman back to the screen before we get to Batman Begins. You need to know those stories to understand why and how we got the Batman films that we got, because they were wildly different to everything that had come before them. At this point, the darkest iteration of Batman that we'd had were the first two, certainly the second Batman films of Tim Burton. So the 1989 Batman had gone dark. But by today's standards, it's quite camp. It is. I mean, there's a darkness to it, but it's quite camp. And what I'd say about those films, I love the '89 Batman. I do, because that was my Batman. I was 10 years old and I was lapping it up. What I will say about it is, as stunning as a film as it looks, does it look like a Batman film or does it look like a Tim Burton film? It looks like a Tim Burton film. I wouldn't say that is the style of Batman. That is the style of Tim Burton. So the Gothic buildings, the kind of twisty, the Danny Elfman soundtrack is very much a Tim Burton movie. But that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. But what Christopher Nolan wanted to do was make a Batman movie. Not a Christopher Nolan movie, not a Tim Burton version of Batman, not a comic book version of Batman. Batman. So this is Batman's universe. That's what this is in. So it wasn't about putting his own style on it. And he kind of said his whole pitch was that the last 6 Batman movies, the last 5 Batman movies had all been style over substance. That's what they were. It was style, 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 very little substance. And it's hard to argue that. It really is. Certainly Batman and Robin is the epitome of that statement. It was all style over substance. Whereas he wanted to make one grounded in reality. Others had attempted this. So Darren Aronofsky very much wanted to make a Batman movie, and I believe his was going to be based on Batman Year Zero, I think, Year One, or The Dark Knight Returns. I can't remember, it was one or the other. It was ultimately rejected. It was touted around for a while. I can remember seeing it in film magazines that Darren Aronofsky was going to be doing Batman. And it never came to fruition, but there's a relevance to his involvement. We'll come to that later. Joss Whedon ultimately came the closest to getting a Batman movie made. In 2002, he had a Batman origin story written and ready to go, and it was rejected. In December 2002, they said no. But then January of 2003 is when they finally greenlit a Batman movie that had no script. So they decided they wanted to do an origin story of Batman with Christopher Nolan. Now, at this point, Christopher Nolan is one of the biggest directors, one of the most respected directors in the world. He wasn't at this point. He really wasn't. He was known for 2 movies at this point. Memento, which was a sleeper hit. If you've never seen Memento, it's a really hard one to describe, but it's a film that plays backwards. So the end is the beginning and the beginning is the end. And it keeps moving backwards as you watch it. But it's a very clever movie. It's a very stylish movie. But again, there is more substance than style. And with repeated viewings, it's a hell of a flick. It really is. From there, he went on to do Insomnia, which again, Insomnia was a thriller movie, which starred Al Pacino and Robin Williams in one of the few dramatic roles that he did. And Hilary Swank is also in it. It's a very good movie, and it's all set in, I want to say it's Alaska, where the sun isn't setting. So it's always daylight, hence Insomnia. It's a very good movie. It's a very, but neither of these were blockbusters. Neither of these, I mean, they did well. They did really well, and they got him a lot of plaudits and a lot of praise as a director. But we're not talking mega budget blockbusters here. We're not. So he'd never been given the reins to one of these before. So they wanted to try something new, and he gave a very good pitch about, this is what it needs to be. It needs to be rooted in reality. And he wanted to tell an origin story. So that is what hasn't been done. And he's right. In all the movies up to this point, they've touched on the origin story. So 89's changed it with Jack Napier being the Joker who killed Batman's parents. The 66 movie didn't even engage it, and the rest of them had never done it. So the genuine origin story of Batman, not how he had the motivation, but how this is my first day out as Batman, had never been done. And I think this is what gives the Nolan trilogy their greatest kind of appeal. And I don't think all the elements are there. The cast, the stunt scenes, the cinematography, it's all there. But I think what makes this trilogy unique is, and someone's going to tell me I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, is I think this is the one exception in superhero cinema where you see the entire story arc. All of it. So you see the inception of the character to the demise of the character. So you see all of it. You see the character from day one, the character to the last day, and you see everything. You see their arc where they peak, and you see them drop, and you see their flaws, and you see everything. So you see the entire character's life as a hero in those 3 movies, and it's epic. It really is. But before we got to that, it had to be made, and expectations were incredibly low. Based off of the 1997 Batman, no one was expecting much out of Batman. They just weren't, which is why they were prepared to give a chance to a younger, kind of unknown director, relatively unknown director at that point. It's also why the cast pretty much free reign, which is why a lot of, at the time, relatively unknown actors appeared in Batman Begins, and a lot of people turned the role down because it was Batman, and it was tainted at this point as being just terrible. George Clooney had spoken out quite loudly about his experiences on Batman, as had Val Kilmer, as had Michael Keaton at that stage. So no one was really interested in being in a Batman movie because it was almost guaranteed to be a bomb. The thing you understand as well is this is before Marvel movies. So Marvel movies hadn't really gathered the pace yet that they were going to. This is 4 years before Iron Man. So superhero movies were a mixed bag at the movies at this point. Some were hits, some were bombs. There were more bombs than hits. So we had, a good example of this, they classed as a superhero movies was The Avengers, not The Avengers, This Avengers. A bomb, a total bomb. And there were loads of these. There was the Shadow, the Phantom. They just didn't really, they weren't good. So no one was expecting much out of Batman. They really weren't. They were like, I think it's at its day. which gave him kind of free reign. Catwoman nearly killed it dead, right? So when Catwoman was released in 2004 and absolutely bombed, it did the opposite. So rather than actually hurt the production of Batman Begins, where you think, well, maybe they're going to start pulling funding, or maybe they're going to shelve the project, which Warner Brothers are famous for doing. Again, we'll come to that later in these talks. It did the opposite. It basically confirmed that this sort of campy superhero stuff no one wants. They just don't. There's no market for it. It's not there. Its movies trapped in the past, and it's what saw the end of them. And Batman Begins has an incredible relevance to the superhero movie genre because it showed what it could be. It showed what you could do with it. And what a wonderful thing. But before we get to that, we got to find Batman, we got to find our villain, and we got to find the whole cast. So in the next one, we're talking about who auditioned to be Batman, who was offered roles in Batman, who ultimately turned them down. Because with the exception of the Bat, no one in Batman Begins was the first choice. Nobody. So a lot of people that offered the role and then turned it down. And it's hard to picture what it would have been. But we'll go into who was nearly who in the next one when we build the chassis floor. That's all for me. If you have any questions, queries, anything you want to know, you can email us at buildwiththeboys@outlook.com. If you haven't yet, please remember to like and subscribe. It helps our channel massively, and we really do appreciate your support. In a world where you can be anything at all, just be nice. Remember, until next time, Gotham needs us.